Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. In today's program, we will be discussing about the recent retaliatory attacks by Iran on Israel. And of course, we know that these attacks by Iran on Israel came in the wake of Israeli attacks 2 weeks after it attacked Iranian consulate in Syria. When we talk about the escalating situation in Middle East, of course, the conflict is growing to the neighborhood as well. What are going to be the ramifications of this first ever aerial attack by Iran on Israel? And what are ramifications not only for Israel, Iran, but also for Israeli aggression on Gaza, the on-ground situation in Gaza, how is it is going to be impacting by all this growing escalation in the region. And when we talk about US role, of course, we know that Israel's allies reverted and countered around 99% of attacks that were, of course, launched by Iranian soil. But when we talk about Israel's counter retaliation to this, of course, there are talks, and President Joe Biden has also said that US would not be standing behind Israel in case it again tries to attack Iran, because it will lead to a war escalating into a region that would be difficult for any country, any major power to put a stop to. In today's program, we will be talking about ramifications of this attack, or rather counter attack by Iran on Israel. And of course, we will also be talking about the on-ground situation in Gaza. This growing escalation in Iran of conflict between Iran and Israel, is this going to be putting attention away from the on-ground situation in Gaza, the famine that we have been talking about, and the United Nations Security Council recent session that was, of course, called by Israel? The main issue of discussion was, of course, this Iran-Israel conflict. But what needs to be done for de-escalation for on-ground situation in Gaza? There were, of course, concerns that Israel has been stopping aid delivery into Gaza, and of course the world needs to remember that what is happening in Gaza. Is it going to redirect attention from Gaza? What are its implications going to be on the region? We will be talking about all this in today's program. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Dr. Hammad, who is Analyst Global Affairs. Welcome to the program. We're also joined by Mr. Sheharyar, who is Expert International Affairs. Welcome to the program. Dr. Hammad, let me start with you. Sure. First, with the very basic question, what do you make of this recent situation after Iran's retaliation to Israel's attacks to its consulate in, of course, Syria, and of course, we know that Iran took its time. What, in your opinion, are reasons behind that? And of course, Iran is calling this Operation True Promise. What do you make of this operation? Do you see it as a success for Iran or for Israel? Because it is also claiming that it is a huge success for Israel as well. And then we will be later moving to the overall ramifications for Middle East.
Thank you so much, first of all, for inviting me to this session, talk on Iran-Israel recent developments. As if we look at the Iran's retaliatory attack on Israel, it of course, like it happened due to the attacks on Syrian, Damascus consulate of Iran, where one senior officer, like general of that Iranian military, was killed, along with 5 more persons were killed in that attack, which was directly hit by Israel. So that Iran, of course, after that attack, Iran, promised to the nation, to its nation, as well as because the Gaza, situation was going on, still going on. So Iran also promised to the Muslim world that, it would retaliate harshly to Israel. But if we look at the attack of Iran to Israel, 2 days ago, or 1 day and night ago, it was symbolically, it is quite hard. Of course, like one country, attacking to Israel, which is thought that the most, like the strongest weaponry country in the world, of course, like aided by America, major ally of Israel, and then a few other countries, and the many big weapons industry ventures to the Israeli, cooperation. Symbolically, it was too hard. It is stated that the Iran may approach Israel directly from its own soil without taking any, aid or support from any Muslim country in the region. Secondly, it is also very strong in that sense that Iran has taken up, has tied its shoes, its laces to at least show that it could destroy if it has come up with the strong ballistic missiles or strong weapons against Israel. Which, of course, like.
But Dr. Hammad, of course, both countries have remained arch enemies, and of course, we have seen them attacking each other's, of course, targets through their proxies. But how significant is this that Iran has directly used Iranian soil for the first time in decades for attack on Israel? And of course, I think, and you can correct me, if this is first ever attack of this biggest magnitude in the recent history that we know of.
To Israel, yes.
Yes.
I mean, after 1967 and then 73, of course, like there was a war in 73, 67.
But when we talk about the kind of weaponry that has been used, ballistic missiles, and of course.
This is, I mean, as far as if we say that this is the first Iranian attack to Israel's soil for the first time directly, it is a huge news. It's a huge news not only for the Muslim world but also for the global, world who has their directly or indirectly takes with Israel, right? And for the Israelis as well, that some country like Iran directly attacked, which is not a neighboring country. We have to see that. So in that context, it is a huge news. The second context is very important, that Iran, which has almost 1,800 kilometer, or the least, I think it says that 800 kilometer, the distance between Iran and Israel. So that is that they can attack Israel directly from their soil. One thing. But if we look at the weapon they use, missiles, they use a drone attacks. They did the drone attacks. They were not as strong as we could say that destroy Israel or any, like damage, strong damage it could do to Israel. So it didn't happen like that.
So in your opinion, it was more of symbolic
It was
attack
more of
to
symbolic.
maintain their deterrence.
Yes, in my opinion, like it is more symbolic. In my opinion, it would kind of, take some solace to the Muslim world that, okay, Israel has been, attacking Gazan people, like since 7th October, and then there is one country from the Muslim world who has taken up the steps.
But let me take this narrative that is being fed, of course, to Sheharyar. Sheharyar, what's your take on this? That, of course, it's for Iran's own deterrence that Iran attacked. So what do you think of the timing? What do you make of the timing of this attack? That, of course, Iran showed a lot of restraint after April 1st when it was attacked. It took 2 weeks. Do you think there was a lot of negotiations going behind the doors to make it kind of sort of symbolic attack, because we know that 99% of these missiles were intercepted already by Israel and its allies?
So Maryam, what if we have to look at this whole response from the Iranian side, we have to look at the events that have been taking place in the last 1 or 2 weeks. And there is now a growing change in perception and public opinion when it comes to Israel's treatment of the Gazan people and the genocide that is taking place in Gaza. Now, what is Israel trying to do? Since the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's trying to change the global narrative. They're trying to divert any peace talks or talks on ceasefire that have been taking place, and they want to divert the attention from Gaza to some other conflict in the Middle East. So that's what their main purpose is. And what are they doing? If you look at like the last 2 or 3 weeks, one, they basically attacked the international INGO, World Central Kitchen, and they killed 7 of their international staff members. That created a lot of like, issue in the global world, these members from various different like countries. Other than that, we also kind of like missed that the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, they also like assassinated 3 of his sons and grandsons.
His family, of course.
So this was a blatant try on Israel's side to derail the ceasefire talks that are taking place. Now, this
and also maybe the attention that Gazans are getting, because there were a lot of pressure, of course,
and
a lot of pressure was building up on Israel, and even its allies were of course not as much vocal about supporting narrative of Israel of self-defense now, especially after United Nations Security Council, where US abstained from this. So do you think that this is Prime Minister's of Israel's own decision to for his own political gains, because a lot of noise is also within Israel about the hostages and of course the promise he made, because the conflict has been ongoing for 6 months now and there are no results whatsoever.
So I totally agree. Now the way this war is like now progressing, it's been like over 6 months, a lot of civilian deaths, and there hasn't been like any result in sight. Even though if you look at the whole geography of Gaza and the military might that Israel has, it hasn't been able to achieve its objectives. And now Netanyahu also knows the day that this war is over, his political career is also like ending. So he's trying his best to increase or widen the theater of war, and this whole like strike on the consulate of Iran in Damascus, that was one way in bringing Iran into the conflict as well. So when Iran was deciding on how to basically establish their credible deterrence, they had this thing in mind that this is what Israel wants. Israel wants to pull Iran into a global conflict, and Israelis know that as soon as Iran and Israel go into a direct confrontation, then the US and their allies would not have any other choice but to jump in. And as you also like mentioned, after this like strike by Iran took place, President Biden and Netanyahu had a 25-minute long telephone call in which Netanyahu tried to convince President Biden that we want to respond to Iran and you should like join us. And President Biden very clearly told him that we will not be joining you if you decide to attack or like increase this escalation as well. Again, the global opinion is changing, it's shifting. It's like seeing Israel as an aggressor, and they can see that Israel is trying its best to derail any ceasefire negotiations that are taking place right now, and this was one of that way. Again, if you look at Iran's response, yes, it was symbolic. 300 drones are not enough to even get into Israel's airspace because of the Iron Dome system.
And the kind of drones that were used, of course, although Iran has capability to, of course, use ballistic missiles and drones that can reach Israel's territory in 7 minutes, but they did not use. So,
and it took time.
It took time. So it was more of a strategic decision by Iran as well.
So it was measured, it was proportionate. And I personally think it wasn't even proportionate, because when Israel attacked Iran's consulate, 7 of their key members died. This time around there was no death toll. None of the civilian infrastructure was targeted. It was only military
none
targets.
of the major military targets
So
were,
it was very proportionate. So the Iran's response I see is like very measured and it keeps into mind that they also don't want to escalate the conflict, and they don't want the Middle East to go into a much bigger war than it already is.
So, Dr. Hammad, previously when we discussed about this issue, of course, there were a lot of voices that were not supporting Israel's stance, and one of the major allies of Israel, that is US, was also not supportive of Iran, as was apparent in United Nations Security Council previous meeting where US abstained. But of course, like Sheharyar also alluded to, the talk between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Joe Biden, although he of course tried to convince Netanyahu not to attack Iran, but at the same time US said that Israel is one of ironclad allies of US. So do you think that whole situation puts US and other major allies of Israel in a difficult position, keeping in mind the context in which all this escalation started, that is Israel's aggression on Gaza?
I think it could be a difficult situation if the whole, like this scenario was not expected before. Of course, like when the attack happened in Syria, Damascus, and the Americans, they said that it was not, discussed with us. This is what the American statement
Indeed.
was, that it was Israel's own, act of war. But of course, like when Iran had 2 weeks to
But still there
prepare.
was no condemnation
you know,
from
like,
its
just couple
allies
of-
on this attack on
the Western
Damascus.
allies to Israel, especially the government. The government, I would say, because the people, they are protesting. Since the Israel is attacking, like in Gaza, so the people of these Western, countries, they are protesting against its aggression. But the thing is, like a couple of minutes ago, David Cameron, the former Prime Minister of UK, he stated that, look, we have shown that Israel has the capability to counter and to save its soil from any aggression. It has shown while intercepted 99% of the drones, ballistic missiles of Iran coming to Israel. One thing. The second, David Cameron said that we have shown to the world that this is the double victory of Israel after Iran's retaliation. Why? The second time, because now what we have been claiming, that Iran is an axis of evil in this world, especially in this region, so it has demonstrated. It has been demonstrated by Iran that it is an axis of evil. This is what David Cameron stated in its own.
Right. So do you think,
so
Dr. Hammad, in one way it may have backfired for Iran?
No, I don't think so, because Iran, after the retaliation attack of Iran, not a new country joined the Israel's club. There are the same countries which already,
G7
are supporting.
also
Yeah, they
gave
are already supporting Israel.
diplomatic,
The
of course,
whole,
response.
like the Western world, the main global power of the world, they are already supporting Israel. Even they supported Israel's attack in Gaza, after the Hamas attack to Israel, and they have been supporting it. So after Iran's attack, I don't think so that any new country joined the club of Israel. Yes, they were doing right against Iran. The thing is, what would we like to achieve after this, attacks and counterattacks and retaliation? The whole world is looking for the peace, not only in this region but globally. United Nations role, we are not talking about United Nations at all during this the whole drama. The violent drama. The United Nations is quiet
because
except
it has
stating a few statements that no, it has to be stopped, it has to be the parties have to be in patience. I mean, United Nations is built only for one purpose, to establish, to keep and to maintain peace in this world. This is the only motto of United Nations was, but unfortunately we have been seeing it, especially right after October 2023.
Right,
it is
right,
not very strong.
And
character.
Sheharyar, of course, we have discussed a number of times about the role of these multilateral institutions who are maybe appearing now irrelevant in the face of these growing conflicts. But let's talk about the response of international community, all the major countries and Israel's allies in response to this Iranian attack on Israel. Do you think it also shows double standards of the Western world, because as per Iran, it is also using the same Article 5 of the United Nations of self-defense when it attacked Israel. But there is a condemnation coming from all over the world to this Iranian attack. But there was no condemnation for Israel when it attacked Gaza using the same article.
So yes, Maryam, when it comes to the UN, I just remember that today, I think the Secretary General of UN, Antonio Guterres, he gave a statement that Israel's strike on the consulate in Damascus, that's a breach of international law, and it's a breach of the Geneva Convention as well. So he has stated this, and he has basically held Israel responsible for that. Unfortunately, most of the allies of
Israel. But
Israel.
is it too late?
It is definitely too late, but look at Israel's allies, key allies in the West. None of them even condemned the fact that Israel basically conducted this strike without their knowledge and in breach of the Geneva Conventions as well. And when when Iran basically retaliated to establish its deterrence, now all of these countries are now basically saying that Iran is the aggressor.
And what implications does it have for the international law when we see these double standards?
So, Maryam, in regards to any law, if there is no accountability, if states blatantly break those laws without any repercussions, then international law doesn't really hold, does it? We have seen in multiple occasions, multiple UN conventions, multiple ceasefire requests, Israel has been operating with impunity. The way Israel has basically handled this whole crisis has basically shown that Israel doesn't have any regards for any convenience of the international law. When it comes to conventions of the UN, it has blatantly disregarded all of them. And now, once this retaliatory strike from Iran came, now Israel is asking for an emergency session of the United Nations. The same United Nations whose conventions Israel has basically trampled time and time over and over again. And now Israel basically wants the UN to come in. So this is a very desperate act of face saving that Israel is trying to do. Most of the world, other than the key allies of Israel, they've basically seen the true face of international law. They've seen the double standards being propagated by the Western capitals. A lot of human rights conventions, they're just like a piece of paper now. A lot of developing countries that looked up to this international order, the rules-based order that we basically talk about, they're also asking these questions, that whether these rule or these human rights conventions or this rules-based order, is it only for developing countries to follow? And countries that have the backing of international superpowers, they are beyond any international law or any international covenant or any international convention or accountability. So this is not a very good sign for the way the world is moving towards. If it's the most powerful can take everything, then Russia and Ukraine issues in front of us. Over there, the international community has a different view when they basically see Russia as an aggressor. The same situation, same apartheid that has been going on since 1948 in Israel and Palestine, the world looks the other way. The whole international standards, the whole conventions kind of disappear when their own ally is doing the same thing.
Right. And Dr. Hammad, do you think that this recent escalation between Iran and Israel has maybe put world's attention away from Gaza? Because previously all the news, all the channels, all the media, even UN, United Nations Security Council sessions were focused on the plight of Gazans. But now the focus is on how to de-escalate this situation and to stop it from spreading this in the neighborhood. Do you think that Israel has somehow achieved its objectives?
I think if it that would have been happened. The Israel has achieved its would have achieved its objective if just an hour ago Israel attacked Gaza again and killed 6 people, you know, 6 civilians, you know, and it's simple and common, you know, like their platform or I think the area where they attacked. So it means, and it shows basically that how aggressive Israel is, that it does not listen to anyone in this world. Whatever it wants to do, it does, you know. So even, you know, like of course, like when the Iraq attacked, you know, in retaliation to Israel, there was some kind of sympathies, you know, that came up that look, you know, Israel is the existence of Israel is in danger, as it has been, you know, propagating since long, you know. But today's attack again to the civilian area of Gaza. So I don't think so that Israel would get that much sympathies or.
And how serious are the concerns or fears that Israel might counterattack Iran and this conflict might spread into the Middle East? Although US has of course warned Israel of any such adventure.
US has warned. No, like,
but we have witnessed that in the past few weeks, Israel has not been listening to US or any of its allies.
This is what, you know, like I'm a historian and my background is peace and conflict studies. You know, if you look at the World War First, Second, you know, or the 30 years of wars and, you know, like all these in history, the wars in history. So it happened, you know, not over a day or over a night. You know, it continuously, you know, like following some kind of war aggressive acts by one country or the other. We don't know whether Israel would be at ease or at peace, you know, after US warning to it that it should not be going against Iran again, since America, you know, USA basically, you know, intercepted more of the drone attacks and missile attacks, and it means that USA helped Israel to save Israel's soil. But the thing is, since the war is going on in the world, since the periphery of peace is completely, you know, like invisible in this world, no one is strongly, you know, like propagating that there must be peace in this region, and not only in this region, but it has, you know, consequences in the rest of the world. I think Vladimir Putin, you know, like commented that the price hikes would be visible, you know, after these, you know, two countries.
So economic repercussions are yet to be seen.
Economic repercussions we have already been seeing, you know, like the civilian casualties, 35,000 civilian casualties, you know, in Gaza so far. And then, so the thing is, what the world wants from the people, what Israel wants from its neighbors or from its allies, the global allies. This, you know, like I don't think so that Israel is that much powerful that it could rule the world alone. I don't think so.
Right.
But it means like these global players, they have to make it, you know, like happen, that peace is the most important thing. Otherwise, anything could happen.
Right, but Sheharyar, we have been witnessing these, of course, the de-escalation efforts, and of course they have failed so far. But what do you make of this recent situation in Gaza? Because we know that once the airspaces were closed in Israel and of course in neighboring Jordan and other countries, for some time, maybe for few hours, Gazans were kind of happy that they are not receiving any attacks, but as soon as the threat from Iran diminished, of course there were direct firings at innocent civilians who were just buying their bread and were out and about in streets. So what do you make of the implications of Iran's attack on Israel? Do you think Israel is going to be becoming more aggressive in its attacks in Gaza and surrounding territories? And what about the Rafah operation we have been hearing about?
So Maryam, I basically see the international pressure on Israel mounting by the day. It will be very difficult now for the Western powers to justify this continued aggression by Israel, especially. Israel and its desperation could try to escalate some sort of like situation with Iran. I basically see Israel always as trying to have the last say in all of these issues when it comes to the Middle East. Now that Iran has established a credible deterrence and it has basically set red lines. And mind you, this is not the first attack by Israel on Iranians, Iranian generals, Iranian scientists,
Of course.
Iranian territory as well, and now Iranian consulates. So this is the first time when Iran has now established some red lines. And now with this conflict, if it like continues to go on, I personally see Israel will like see this as an opportunity that, okay, when Iran basically attacks us or Iran retaliates to our aggression, then we start like getting this whole support from our Western, benefactors. So I see this as a dangerous escalation on part of Israel, that it would try to get its attention again off from whatever it is doing in Gaza, and it would want to basically increase or bring other countries into the fold of the conflict as well. This goes in the favor of Israel. This basically gives Netanyahu more time in office. It gives him more time to basically go and like complete this operation. I don't even know what completion now means. Given the destruction that is already taken in Gaza, what is there left now? I personally
Because
think
they are planning ground offensive in Rafah
Again.
as well.
Again.
And of course, US and other allies have been stopping Netanyahu, and
Exactly.
there are voices within Israel as well that are
Exactly.
stopping
But-
from this action.
But the onus is definitely now lies on the Western allies of Israel. They're the ones who have to basically stop arming Israel. They have to force Israel to start humanitarian corridors which basically go into Palestine, and they have to stop arming them with the latest weaponry to use it on the civilians in Gaza. So the onus is now on the Western allies, and that is how we basically see this like situation going forward. There is already a lot of pressure. A lot of like Western capitals are now even saying, especially like Spain is taking the lead, in which they are now also saying that we are now ready to recognize the state of Palestine. And a lot of like Western and also a lot of like Eastern countries are also like coming forward now.
Of course, and Palestine has put its membership resolution again in the
Exactly.
United Nations. So, Dr. Hammad, in your opinion, how this attack has impacted the dynamics of Israel's aggression on Gaza, and of course for the wider region?
I think, of course, one thing which is very obvious after the Iran's retaliatory attacks to Israel, that Israel state is in danger if it is not protected by its allies. But the second point, which is more important, of the civilians' casualties in Gaza and the complete, shut off of Gazan people and their movement and every kind of freedom, restriction by the Israeli forces. So that is, very important to be highlighted more.
Because aid delivery has been restricted for the long term. So do you
everything,
think this attack is going to be making any changes to those dynamics, or do you think the efforts to de-escalation are somewhat at the back foot now?
I think, in my opinion, that attack would not change the dynamics of the Israel-Gaza because Iran attacked Israel in the retaliation of the attack of Israel on the Iranian embassy.
So
consulate.
it was to establish Iran's own deterrence.
Its own, because it was Iran was attacked, so that is why Iran attacked in retaliation. If Iran had, attacked earlier, when the Israelis started attacking Gaza and then the civilian casualties after 7 October for last, 6 months, so we would have said that, okay, Iran have, stood up for the sake of or saving the lives of the civilians of Gaza. So I personally do not, see that it's going to change some dynamics for the miseries of Gaza, unfortunately, since, we have seen that the recent attack of Israel to the Gazan people. But one thing which is very important, the people of Gaza and their, the comfort, establishing comfort for Gaza or the peace for the Gazan people would remain highlighted, even after Iran's attack on Israel.
Right, but Sheharyar, how serious are these concerns that Israel might counter-attack Iran after this attack? Because of course Israel's war cabinet has given its a green light to Prime Minister Netanyahu to take any action necessary against Iran.
So Maryam, the way Israel is behaving as a very irresponsible state right now and operating with complete impunity when it comes to international law, I wouldn't be surprised if Netanyahu and his war cabinet tries to pull off some other stunt in which they can get the Middle East.
And what would it mean for the region first, and secondly for US? Does it put US in a difficult position?
In a very difficult position.
And would Israel's allies would be standing behind Israel in this sort of situation?
That would be a very important test case right now, because we have to look at the global dynamics as well. Right now, Russia is making a lot of gains when it comes to Ukraine. And a lot of analysts are also saying that if Ukraine is not supported by the US and the EU or the NATO allies, that war might be over by the end of this year.
Yes.
Another development that is very important is the US elections that are also stated to be taking place by the end of this year. So this is the time in which President Biden, who's seeking to find another term in office, he wouldn't want to destabilize or
engage US in another war.
Right now. Secondly, the whole attention of the world now has moved from the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and we have seen that even that war has had a lot of effects, inflationary effects on Europe. The oil prices, when it comes to commodity prices, when it comes to inflation in Europe, and also energy prices, they are rising. And if you look at Middle East also is one of the largest markets when it comes to oil trade, gas, and everything. If this conflict arises and all of these Middle Eastern countries are also engulfed in a larger conflict, it would have devastating impact on global commodity prices, global supply
might
chains.
Lead to an energy crisis in the
energy
world.
Crisis is already there, but then it would not be something that we could sustain, especially in the developing countries. So this whole issue will have a ripple effect on the international geopolitical and geoeconomic dynamics as well. And this would divide the world into various different segments or sections, in which there will be various different geopolitical entities that would be fighting for influence. So this is not something that even the US wants to get into right now, even though their attention is now on Russia. They have to support their long-term ally Israel. They have to counter the rise of China. So the US is already very stretched out.
Do you think that still there are threats and concerns that Israel might counterattack, because Iran has already warned US that in case it sides with Israel, then none of the bases of US are going to be safe in Middle East. So of course this is going to be a ripple effect in the region. Do you think that Israel not listening to its allies in the past could take such action?
If you look at the history of Israel in that sense, being aggressive country, so it could happen. We could not deny or state that Israel would be at ease, even nothing has happened after the Iran's attack on its soil, nor in civilian casualty, nor in its any military installation, because once someone is in aggressive mode, so it is hard to be logical. This is the common kind of state of any person, and the same applies to the state. Since they have established the war cabinet right after the Hamas attack in Israel, and since then it has been working.
One of the reasons is there are no repercussions for Israel so far from the Western allies, because we see the same kind of trade happening, arms are being supplied, and of course they're all negotiations and everything is intact. So
there is a warning from USA, but not a threat. from USA, that if Israel goes against Iran, so they would take their support back. So there is not that kind of threat to Israel. Rather, UK, the former PM David Cameron, he stated that no, we should continue supporting Israel. Even then, it has been like attacking civilians of Gaza. So I mean, at the moment, at this the strong aggressive mode of the apparatuses happening in Middle East, we can expect anything. But it depends on the like the other Arabs governments.
That's what I was going to ask you about, the response of and the role of other neighboring countries like Jordan, Syria, Iraq. Of course, they are in the critical juncture as well, keeping in mind if this fire spreads to their country as well, and there is a huge threat, of course, because this war is looming on their heads. What kind of response should these Arab states be giving, because we don't see a lot of unity in that regard as well? And what kind of alliances do you see emerging within Middle East in the near future?
I think one thing is quite clear, that like before this Israel's attack on Gaza, there was a wave of recognizing Israel by the Arab countries, some of the Arab countries, and like Saudi Arabia was in line, and a few other countries were as well. So at least that is stopped. That was categorically said by all of these Arab states, that we are not going to have any kind of alliances or any kind of embassies into each other's countries. There is another point as well. If we look at a few months back of the October 2023, that there was the like kind of from antagonistic to like cordial relationship between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
But
by
now,
the support of
in the
China.
recent past, we have seen that Saudi has been very vocal about condemnation of Israel.
Oh yes, of course. Like they have to. I mean, it is of course like their stake as well in that region. So they.
So what kind of do you see the same alliances in the foreseeable future, or some kind of new power shift we will be witnessing in the near future?
It could be like Iran would stand alone at this, again.
Right. So, Sheharyar, do you think that this attack is going to be impacting balance of power in the region, specifically in regards to Iran's influence in the region?
No, I don't think there will be any difference when it comes to the whole, power dynamics in the Middle East. But again, like the precedent has been set, and Iran has also like categorically stated that they don't have any intentions of further escalating this conflict. But if there's another retaliation from Israel, then Iran would also be pressurized into giving a much more bigger response. So that is what like Iran's stated position is. The US for now has basically agreed, and they have also done a lot of work behind the scenes to de-escalate the situation as well. And we've discussed that they have had long meetings with the war cabinet and the Prime Minister of Israel.
Right, but let's move now towards, of course, the real issue that is in the Middle East, that is Israel's aggression on Gaza. Do you think that in the foreseeable future we are going to be witnessing any more pressure from these, of course, countries in the Middle East, and also from in the international community, so that these talks of negotiations and of course de-escalation and peace talk reach to a conclusive end?
So for now, most of the pressure is coming from the Western states. The Middle East is playing its part, especially Qatar, but they're like more negotiating a peace deal or a ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel, facilitated by the US as well. I personally don't think it goes in the favor of Netanyahu and his war cabinet that this conflict de-escalates. Ceasefire doesn't go in his favor. And obviously he knows that, you know, because he hasn't been able to extract any results.
But Sheharyar, we cannot forget the economic repercussions of this conflict, because previously it was Russia-Ukraine conflict, and now for the this conflict and of course this Israeli aggression on Gaza has been ongoing for 6 months now, and of course the world and its of course its repercussions are felt throughout the country when we talk about of course inflation that you discussed earlier as well. But do you think that if this conflict escalates, this is going to be impacting the main route supplies, and this is going to be giving edge to Russia as well somehow?
Yes, that is correct, but unfortunately when it comes to Gaza and when it comes to this like particular geographical location, it doesn't have like any sway when it comes to any global supply chains. For example, Russia was the key provider of oil and gas to Europe for the longest time through the Nord Stream system, and when that was disrupted, the international gas prices went up, especially in Europe, because they were very heavily dependent on their energy needs with Russia. When it comes to the Middle East, unfortunately, because this area is like so small, and obviously the GCC countries which produce the bulk of the oil and gas, especially when it comes to Qatar, their international clients are now more towards China, even Russia,
they are
India,
diversifying,
and they have like
of course
diversified there. So unfortunately this particular conflict has no bearing whatsoever on the international prices of commodities. But yes, you're right, if this conflict widens and it brings the rest of the countries in the Middle East into the fire of this conflict, yes, then the international oil prices, international commodity prices can go haywire. One issue that we've like seen, that the Houthis in Yemen, they have tried to disrupt the international shipment lines as well.
Of course.
Once when this retaliatory strike from Iran happened, they also like seized one of the container ships, Israel bound or like owned by one of the billionaires over there, and they basically commandeered it and brought it to Iran as well, and that also they basically say is a response to another ship that was kind of like stopped by the Western allies. So a lot of like global politics
of
taking
course.
place.
So lastly, Dr. Hammad, do you see any foreseeable efforts in the efforts to of course bring an end to this Israeli aggression on Gaza, and how do you see that these efforts to de-escalate are going to be playing out in the near future, keeping in mind the recent escalation between Israel and Iran?
Maryam, every war, either it is a world war or 30 years or 70, 100 years of wars, it has an end. It has a peace agreement between the parties, between the stakeholders or amongst the stakeholders of the war. Of course, like we're gonna have that end as well. But the question is, after how many damages of lives, after how much casualties of like the civilians, children, women, transgenders, disabled or differently able persons, so we have to look at their movement as well. So the world has to think that what and how much damages do they want to before ending this war in this part of the world. So I mean, if we being a peace educationist or having the peace background, so I would say that existence of Israel and the Palestinians of this region, it is like it is there, it would stay there. But the thing is, when we are going to realize, accept and recognize the peaceful settlement of this region for the peace of the rest of the world.
So we have to address the root cause of
the whole conflict, since it has been happening 1948.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Hammad Long, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Mr. Sheharyar Khan, for joining us in today's program. As we conclude today's program, of course, it is evident that Middle East is in a critical juncture, and now the international community has to play its role, because the region nor the world can, of course, pay the price of this escalating war. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.